It is time for Main Street Magazine on Robin Hood Radio. Of course, Main Street Magazine can be found, well, all around our area with the actual beautiful magazine, but also on the web, mainstreetmag.com. And we are joined once again by Thorin Christensdottir. Thorin, thanks for joining us today and welcome back.
Thank you so much.
Nice to have you with us. And once again, we'll get right into the issue. Some of the stories that piqued my interest. Number one, the story Faith Alive.
Yes, so our October issue, we decided this year to dedicate it to history. And so Faith Alive is written by the Reverend John A. Nelson out of the Salisbury Church. And one of my writers was actually the one who kind of pitched the idea to me and connected the Reverend and I. And I personally love the idea and the story and the history of this church. I mean, how many churches around here are 275 years old? So I was very happy to read the article and curious to learn so much about it. And I hope my readers are as well.
All right. Now, this is something that our area is very, very well known for many, many, many years ago. And hopefully will be known in the future for, and that is the railroad's lasting impact. I mean, if you look at some of the historic pictures of the railroad stations that are no longer here, and even the ones that are here, this area was really central, and rail transportation was an important part of it.
I'll say through the last, I think, 10 to 15 years, I've learned so much about the railroad and the impact on our entire region about it. And this article, John and I actually started discussing it, and he started working on it 6 months ago, right before our transportation issue in May. And I said, John, we're going to have a historic issue. I really want a huge article about the railroad, because in our region there are many, many people who are complete railroad buffs, and then just people who are fascinated by it. And I don't think that people may understand the huge impact that it had on this entire region and what was actually here before. You know, as outlined in the article, so many of these railways were here, and there's, we have two left, the one on the Hudson River and the one that comes up to Wassaic, at least here in New York. But there were dozens of them. And if you look at now what's left, as you mentioned, some of these old train stations, right here in Millerton, where I'm located, we have two of them. And, in Pine Plains, Factory Lane Auto Repair, their building was it wasn't a train station for people, but for products. And so if you start looking around the region, you'll see roads that were created because of the railway, or buildings that have sadly been left to the times or have been repurposed. Like, in Millerton here, Country Gardener Florist, that was the original train station in Millerton, and where Steed Real Estate is now, that's actually the secondary train station. So it's just, I'm so interested in it, and I know a lot of other people are, we shared this story on our website and Facebook, and I just saw this morning that two people were discussing it, and one of them said, I had no idea of how many railways there were all crisscrossing our region.
Well, interesting story. Sharon had its own railroad station, which most people don't realize anymore. When I started Q103, we started it in the railroad station in Lakeville, Connecticut. But
oh, wow.
I actually have spoken to, over the years, maybe 20 years ago, kids who used to go between Millerton and Lakeville, and they would be walking along the railroad tracks, and the train would slow down and pick them up and take them either way. There's just a ton of great railroad stories. And then, of course, you have the Canaan Union Depot in North Canaan, which is amazing. But the railroads, because we produce so much iron ore here for the wars years ago, and most people don't realize that old Ironsides, not only did it carry cannonballs from this area, but the wood that made old Ironsides unsinkable came from this area as well.
Exactly.
And most of this was all tied in with the railroads and the rail transportations eventually. So it's a great story. And for people that aren't aware of how important the railroads were for here, they can check up on that.
For sure. And then also just in the impact, because our vicinity, in our close proximity to New York, a lot of the foodstuffs were shipped to the city, and, it still is in a way. But, 100, 200 years ago, the railroad was used to bring foods down. And I remember I was up in Chatham for a while, and Chatham was a big, railroad hub. And there are two little ponds there, and one of the railways is right by the pond, and I think it was the Borden name, the family, but they had a ice house right by it. And I didn't know, this is 10, 15 years ago, and someone told me, well, they used to cut ice out of the pond in the winter and put it right on the train, which would come by the pond, and then they shipped it to the city for ice boxes. And they used to do the same thing, on the Hudson River when there were deep freezes. They used to cut ice blocks out and then ship them with the trains down. It just goes to show you, like, oh wow, the things that were moved via train.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because it's the same thing in Lakeville, and you see pictures of them cutting the ice, and how they stored the ice, but to get them there was just to cover it with straw and hay.
Yeah.
Just tons of straw and hay, and that would keep the ice blocks firm. So the railroads have a huge impact in the history in our area.
For sure.
Once again, we are talking about Main Street Magazine on air with Thorne Christensdottir, and your next story, and I remember this as well because my grandfather, Melvin Dennis, he fought in World War I. But you've got a great story on the 29th Connecticut Infantry also that is posted on your website as well.
Yes, and that's in print. Now, Pete Vermiglia is a teacher at Housatonic Valley Regional High School, and I was speaking to him, months and months ago, and he said that he and one of his students, Shane, were working on this story, and he told me the gist of it, and I was like, that is a wonderful story. It is the perfect match for our historical issue, and I was like, I'd love to share that with our readers. So the two of them did an amazing job on this piece. They, the research, even the photography, because early on Pete was saying to me that I don't know what kind of imagery we can find. But I think the photograph and the drawn map on the second page, and just the story itself, it kind of reminds you of the impact of people even from our region, and how they tie into these big events, that it's relevant. We are relevant. Our history is relevant to the bigger picture as well.
We are on a journey through some of the articles that you'll find in Main Street Magazine. Another interesting article, and antique dealers have always been popped up around here forever, but you've got an interesting story, 5 generations of antique dealers.
Yes, so the Montage Antiques, the Jennings-Ron family, I've gotten to know Dana myself, in the last few years, and her daughter Chloe and her husband Fritz, and super nice people. And just to learn about their business and how they came to be in Millerton. And I myself even learned more through the article that Christine wrote about them. But she has said that, they do very good business, I think, because of the mixture of products that they find and have, and the people that they work with that, supply them with all kinds of furnishings. And one of the things that, that's the great thing about their store is they have price points, that run the gamut. So they have very affordable items and very unique and kind of cool items too. And it's always like every week she has something new. And but just to learn that Chloe is now the 5th generation, they're in it, they know it, so it's, if there's anything that they don't know, they will find out about antiques and, furniture pieces and other pieces.
And I have to hit on your movie review, because the original Joker, not the original, but the Joker movie that last came out was very creepy and weird, and had a lot of weird things. But I can tell you right now, you've got a movie review here on the latest edition of the Joker, and I've seen the advertisements for it, and this Joker to me looks like it might be terrifying.
Yeah, so this is our third. We just started our movie reviews about 3 weeks ago on our website. And CV went and saw it last week. We shared it on Friday, ahead of everyone going to the movies. And, CV shared some comments with me that he didn't put in the review because we didn't want to give everything away. But one of the main things that we talked about and he had in his review, and that I've heard through the weekend from all kinds of other reviews, is Joaquin Phoenix, his performance is Oscar worthy. And so it's, but creepy. Yeah.
Well, clowns have a bad image now, and have really for several years. But and that movie is in release throughout. Really, anybody who's in the Main Street Magazine area it's here, and it's showing now as well. Well, anything else you want to hit upon before we wrap this up?
Well, as we discussed, our October issue, our history issue, is out, has been out for over a week. We are working on our November issue right now for print, which will focus on art and design. So if anyone would like to advertise, we always welcome that. And our website, we are posting new material every day. As we touched upon, we have film reviews that are up every Friday. We've got some, two of our recent, things that we've posted was a Chicana Hills alumni soccer game that was about a week ago. Noble Horizons Auxiliary. We have a lovely piece on them that is a link right from our homepage about their fundraising efforts and how they raised an amazing amount of money and the good things that they're doing with that. So we've got some great an array of stories on our website that is there's something for everyone.
Well, Main Street Magazine, once again, distributed throughout our area. Beautiful magazine, and also on the web, mainstreetmag.com. Thorin, we'll speak to you again in a week or so.
Sounds terrific. Thank you.